Yo guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the ATV Revolution. Today it is Bike of the Week 5. Now we're going to be doing another hybrid. I love hybrid builds. I've always loved them. I used to be really partial to like YZ426 hybrids and, taking the 2-strokes and making them 4-stroke. Now I've completely reversed and I really like taking the 4-stroke ATVs and seeing them converted to 2-stroke. So as you saw last week, we had the YZ250 mixed with a YFZ450 hybrid. If you haven't checked that out, make sure to check out that video. Now this week we're doing one that I've never even seen before. I've seen the YZ250 conversions. I've seen 400EXs converted with 250R motors and CR500 motors. I've seen it done with TRX450Rs. I've never seen it done with a Suzuki before though. So this one is made up of a 2008 LTR450 and an 87 LT250R. So the quad was built by Josh Barringer. And it was also built with a lot of help from his friend Jared Combs, who owns Combs Customs. Apparently he did a lot of the fabrication and whatnot, and a ton of the work that went into this quad should be credited to him. But between the two of them, they made a really nice LTR250. They did a really good job making it look very factory, which I'm huge on that. And you guys are going to see with these pictures, they did an awesome job fabricating up the motor mounts to make it fit as OEM as possible, I guess you would say. The exhaust runs out the back perfectly. It's just a really, really nice looking build. I think he still has some work to do on it yet, but in the format that it sits, it's rideable and it's really sick. So if you're not familiar with the Quad Racer, it was initially debuted in 1985 and it made a run until 1992. And it was always one of my favorite quads ever. It's part of the reason why I picked this as Bike of the Week. I love the LT250R. I was totally biased against the TRX250R back then. I'm not really biased towards anything nowadays. I kind of like all quads and dirt bikes. But back then I was like hardcore LT250R, and everybody was always saying the 250R by Honda was better. And I was like, nah man, Suzuki is where it's at. So I went and built in 1988. I did a full restoration. I think I was 12 or 13 years old. And me and my buddy AJ, we like fully restored this thing. It was all we were doing. All our time was going into this thing. It was pretty sick. So there's always been a soft spot in my heart for the LT250R or the Quad Racer, whatever you want to call it. So from 85 to 86, they had a non-power valve motor, and then they had a huge update in 1987. They added a power valve, they updated the suspension, and a couple of other things. The seat changed, they added like a wider seat area in the back. It was a little bit more comfortable. It was a badass quad, man. It was definitely very competitive with the TRX250R and the Tech 4 or Takate 4 and the Banshee, of course. But for the 250 class, you had the Suzuki LT250R, the Honda TRX250R, and the Kawasaki Tech 4, which was a 250. So after 1992, the Suzuki LT250R was discontinued, and there was a long, scarce run where you couldn't get a sport quad of that caliber from Suzuki until the Z400 came around in 2003, which is, the Z400 is a really badass quad too. But then the LTR450 came back out in 2006 to run up against the TRX450R, which had come out in 2004, and the YFZ450. So they ran from 2006 to 2012 in the LTR450 format. Really badass quad. I've never actually owned one. I've ridden them. They handle really nicely and they have a lot of power. It's a great platform. And Doug Gust actually helped design this quad. If you guys aren't familiar with him, he's like a really iconic ATV racer. And he helped design the LTR450, so it's a great platform. So getting back to Josh's story, Josh liked the LT250R also. He grew up riding quads and everything, and he really wanted to stick with 2-stroke. So he bought an 87, an 89, and a 91 LT250R. He wanted to take the best parts from the three and build one really nice quad. He wound up building the 87 motor, and he started working on one of the frames. And he was going to convert it to LT500R A-arms, which is a common modification on the LT250R because the A-arms and suspension really aren't the greatest on the Quad Racer of the early days. So that was considered an upgrade to move into the LT500R Quadzilla A-arms because they were longer and wider, essentially giving you better handling. The nimbleness and everything that you get from a TRX 250R, it was just never really there with the LT250R. Even if you upgraded to the Quadzilla A-arms, it just wasn't there. So his buddy had an 08 LTR450 and he bombed the motor, and between the two of them, they decided that they were going to combine the motor out of the 87 LT250R into the frame of the 08 LTR450 roller. So that's where the idea for this project came together. he abandoned the idea of building up the LT250R frame with the Quadzilla A-arms and whatnot, and they started moving into this roller. So I'm going to do this in a different format than I've been doing with the other Bike of the Week videos. I'm going to open up these pictures and I guess, you know, kind of walk through these together. And I really want to show the craftsmanship of building the motor mounts because he did a really good job. Okay, so we're going to start out here with this first picture. So this is the 87 LT250R motor, and it's sitting in the frame of the 08 LTR. And you can see it fits pretty nicely in there. There's plenty of space and stuff. That 4-stroke motor was a little bit bigger. It's not perfectly lined up. You can see they have blocks of wood under here, and they're mocking stuff up. They had already started doing the front motor mounts. They made those out of aluminum, and those lined up pretty nicely. It looks like he has that one bolted in, and he's using the wood to prop it up to kind of line up the rest of the motor mounts. You're going to see here as we move forth. In the back, the swing arm bolt doesn't quite line up with the mount on the motor, just to take note of that. Here's the other side. You can see the boards propped up underneath. That front motor mount here is looking good. Now in this picture, you can see a better profile of what things are looking like, and I think that motor fits in there really nicely. That's just me. Here's a view of the back. You can see up here that portion of the motor. It's like a couple inches forward of where the LTR450 motor would be. Now here is a close-up of that front motor mount. You can see that fits nicely. They have it shaved to match the contour of the motor. Here's a little power valve window on the motor. Here's the other side. And here is a downward looking at the shifter. You got to make sure everything lines up. You know, when you're building a hybrid like this, there's a lot of stuff that goes into account that people don't even think of, and the shifter is one of them. So where they were setting this engine, you know, that's going to account for the weight distribution, but it's also going to account for where the shifter lays. And it looks like he was able to use the factory shifter right here, and it appears to be a regular length so that your boot's going to line up nicely, and it probably shifts really smooth. Now here's the kicker. Here's another thing to take into account. The LTR450 is an electric quad, or an electric start quad. They did make a kick conversion kit, but from the factory, it is not designed to have a Kickstarter. And the LT250R kicks backwards, which differs from the TRX250R, which kicks forward. That's actually weird to me, kicking forward. The TRX450R kicks forward also, but it makes sense because with heel guards or Nerf bars, it's difficult to kick backwards, whereas on like a dirt bike, you don't have heel guards or anything to interfere. So he is lining everything up here, making it fit, and you'll see in these pictures here, he has it fitting almost perfectly. So there's just enough gap that it's not going to rub against the frame. And I think he has, oh, that's the last one. But they did end up having to shorten the shifter down a little bit and make it, lean it out just a little bit to make it fit. And I guess it kicked back and misses the heel guards. And I think he puts Nerf bars on here too, but he makes it so that it works. So in this picture, you can see how that motor's sitting also. It's a nice profile. I think it looks pretty OEM. Another shot right there. Now here is where they started the fabrication beyond just the front motor mounts. So this is the bottom of the motor, and here is where the OEM bolt would go through on the LT250R, and we're in between the frame rail. You can see this piece of square tubing. They custom made that, and you can see they're starting to clean up the metal and everything, getting ready to weld. Then they put these two tabs here, so it's directly under the motor. That should be nice and strong. Here's another angle to take a look at it. You can see where the OEM mounts were for the LTR450 motor. So here's where the new mounts are going to be. And now he's working on that swing arm bolt mount. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to imagine what's going on here until I get to the end where you're going to see everything comes together. He does a really solid job. So you can see here is the swing arm, and here is the swing arm bolt going through the motor. And what they're doing is building a custom motor mount. You can see a better idea from the back here. He has the mount, there's a plate here that runs through the swing arm bolt and through the actual motor. Here's another close-up. And another close-up of the other side. Now this piece down here just looks like it's hanging out, kind of doing nothing, and you might be wondering what that's for. But you'll see he's going to drill a hole here, and he puts custom brackets that weld to the frame, and that this whole motor mount actually bolts up to the frame down there. Here's another view from underneath. You'll see a bolt's going to go right through here and mount to the frame. It's pretty sick. Here's the lower motor mount. You can see they welded it in at this point. Another shot from the other side. And now they're starting to get everything mounted up. You can see they have the radiator in there. They were able to utilize the OEM LTR450 radiator, which is sick. Anytime you can utilize an OEM part in factory location on a hybrid build, that's usually prime because you can make things look like they were meant to be that way. Here's a view from the top. You can see there's no obstructions or anything with that radiator. And you can see here too, we'll zoom in, that back motor mount. It's looking really good. And another shot from the back, looking at that motor mount. And now this is on the other side, and they've actually welded in the lower motor mount portions. If you can see down here, and there will be more close-up pictures you'll be able to see. Let me zoom in here for you. You can see this is welded in. You can see the welds right here. It's a little bit dark, but that's what they're doing there. Here's a close-up of that motor mount, and it looks a little weird here, like it might be interfering with the shifter, but it's not. There's plenty of space for that shifter to fit on there. You can see you got some nice solid welds here, and this is just a nice looking bracket. You know, when that's powder coated and everything, that's going to look like it's, you know, made that way. Here's the other side. Now here's where you really get a good idea of the work that went into this quad and how things are going to go together. So you can see in the back they have those two big pieces of steel welded in place. Here is that custom bracket that hooks into the OEM swing arm location, and then where the swing arm bolt would normally go on the LT250R is going to go right through here. You can see under here the two motor mounts that they fabricated in, and then the aluminum mounts that go up front. Really solid if you ask me. The only thing that I would do differently is I'd probably cut out these OEM motor mounts, but that's just me. You're never really going to see that stuff anyway. And he might be doing it also. He still has some work that he's doing to this quad, but it looks like they have a really solid setup here, and that motor should stay rock solid in there. Here's another view from the top. You can see how that motor is just going to drop right in there. Really solid construction if you ask me. Here's another shot of the back. Here's a really good shot. You can see all these welds and everything on here. It looks like a really solid setup. I think they did an excellent job. And this picture is a little bit blurry, but you can see what's going on. So this is a custom coned pipe. It looks a lot like a Paul Turner pipe, and you can see where they cut and made some modifications right here. I'm gonna move to the next picture because it's a little clearer. You can see right here they cut that section of the pipe, and it looks like they added in and changed the angle of the pipe slightly to make it come through here nice and flow really clean. And I mean, this is one of the best flowing hybrid pipes I've ever seen. It really looks like it was made for this quad, like it's the format that came from the factory. And from the back you can see it's coming through right next to the shock, in between the frame. It's not rubbing anywhere. There's plenty of clearance, so if the quad's vibrating or anything, it's not going to be rubbing on the frame. Really good design. Here's from the other side. You can see they got the radiator in there and everything. It's really looking nice. There's not too much space going on where it looks like it's a hybrid quad and it's not really made for it. I think it's really flowing nicely. Here's with the plastics on there. You can get a good idea of what this thing's looking like, and we'll move on. This is really cool. The silencer. So he took that FMF silencer, he put it sideways, and he fit it in the OEM location, because the LTR does have a center mount exhaust, if you didn't know. And they kept that factory location, and I think it looks really sick the way that they put it. And something that went on when they were fabricating all this stuff, the OEM shock, I'm going to go back a couple pictures here, actually was getting in the way. You can see they have the reservoir at the top in the OEM location, and it's non-movable. So he got a Fox shock that had a remote reservoir, and you can see in this picture the reservoir is up here. They did that in order to get clearance for the exhaust and for this custom airbox that they made, which really, it looks OEM. I think they did a really good job. And here is with the carburetor and whatnot in there, and you can see this fuel valve and fuel line, fuel filter. So the LTR450 has fuel injection, so there wasn't a fuel petcock or traditional fuel lines and whatnot. So he made all this stuff custom so that it would work. He put a little shutoff valve here, and the fuel line's running right to the carburetor. It looks really good. Now these pictures here are the way the quad sits now, as far as I know. It's running and it looks awesome. I really think it looks good. So it's not entirely done. He still has some work to do. I don't know if he's going to get the pipe chromed, do some refinishing on some of the parts maybe. But I'll tell you what, it looks awesome to me. I think it's a really clean build. I imagine that it runs really well too. He said he doesn't have too much runtime on it. I think he finished it or had it in this condition in November of 2019, so it hasn't been very long, and he plans to get some runtime on it this year. So if you ask me, I think that's a really sick build. I love the idea of sticking Suzuki with Suzuki. They're both quad racer parts. A lot of guys that do hybrids, they'll take like a Kawasaki motor and put it in a Honda, or vice versa. I think it's really cool that he stuck with Suzuki, all quad racer. Really, really cool. I would love to build a quad like this. It's definitely an inspiration to me, and maybe it can inspire some of you guys to do your own custom hybrid build. So let me know in the comment section below what you think of this quad. I'm gonna play a couple videos of this thing at the end. The thing sounds really good, and yeah, man, I am really impressed with this. So Josh, awesome job. I want to give you a huge thank you for taking the time to send these pictures and videos to me, and for typing up the story for me. Really appreciate it. If you're interested in posting your quad for Bike of the Week, make sure to send me a DM at Sabo350. I do get a lot of submissions. I look through all of them, but it's possible that I'll pick yours. If you do decide to send it in, please send at least one clean picture, and underneath write Bike of the Week. And that way I'll know what the submission is. If I choose your bike, please be prepared to send in multiple pictures just like Josh did, and at least one video and some kind of story about the quad dirt bike Ford 3-wheeler. All right, guys, so that about wraps it up for this one. If you haven't already, definitely check out my last video on Project 250R. We're getting super close to the build series. A shitload of parts came in. If you watched the last video, you saw the Fox shocks did not come in. They came in the next day. It's on my Instagram story. I posted up those parts, and I'll probably have a short video including those parts, or I'll just include that in the next video, however it goes. Waiting to hear back from ESR. Hopefully that will be this week. And then we're going to start the build series, man. I'm dying to get this thing started. You have no idea. I know you guys are too. So again, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think of this, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out. You guys all rock, and I'll see you on Friday.